Welcome to this episode of Clarity Chat. I was just pouring tea in my cup when my face appeared here. So cheers over a cup of tea. This is the 113th episode of Clarity Chat. First of all, it comes at a very auspicious time. Just yesterday, we had what what people started calling the Shiv Shakti Day, which was International Women's Day and Mahashivratri coming together. So what a combination! Shiv is also known as Ardhanarishwar. It's a combination of male and female. So we all carry that energy. So on that auspicious note, welcome to the Clarity Chat. In the last Clarity Chat, I had promised a promising speaker, but then what happens in corporate life. He had other exigencies, and we're going to bring him in 2 weeks later. And I hope no more exigencies at that time. But then it wasn't very difficult to find the topic for this AMA, because about a month back I had addressed a gathering of IT professionals which are typically engaged in manufacturing domain, and I was just asked to give a overview of the manufacturing industry. So I kind of concocted something. I wasn't sure whether they will like it or not, but they did, and well, I just tweaked that presentation, simplified it a little bit for the online audience, and here we are. Okay. Well, it was, and of course, it was a very lively discussion. The discussion was primarily on the market-facing aspects of the customer in the manufacturing industry. So, in today's discussion, we are not really going to cover so much of manufacturing or IoT or robotics and all of that, but more about a top-down approach to the industry. As I had mentioned, how you look at the industry and then zero in on the organization, understand the ecosystem, understand the play of data, and like how that data gets converted to process KPIs, and that they get converted to business KPIs. And of course, then we will talk through case studies. So one thing I promise in Clarity Chats to all of you is lots of case studies, lots of examples, so that it doesn't remain gyan, and there are practical takeaways for all of you. Okay. And of course, the value of a live session like this is that you get to ask questions, and we can engage in discussions, and you can actually keep extracting what you want out of me and my guests here. Before I start, let me acknowledge my audience, which I do every in the beginning of every session, which is we have CXOs, founders, IT managers, and seasoned technology industry leaders in our audience. All of us know that technology is necessary but not sufficient to drive business performance. I and the guests on Clarity Chat, we have built the bridge between the necessary and sufficient, which I call as the art of managing technologies. And Clarity Chat builds the bridge between the technology and business success for you, all of you who are trying to make an impact with technology. And as I said, it's all experiences, no gyan. What you will find here, you won't find in books. That's a promise. Okay. And thank you for joining us for the last 112 episodes and encouraging us with your interactions and questions. As of now, I feel a little all alone here. So unless you guys start raising your hands or sending some comments my way, I wouldn't know that I'm speaking to a blank computer, right? A blank computer camera. Please start sending your name and where you are joining from on the chat in the comment section of YouTube or LinkedIn. We have had some issues of late in receiving comments from mobile devices, but nevertheless, please keep sending. And I'm just alerting my team that if you see something which is not coming to the studio but that's coming on the on LinkedIn, just copy paste it on the private chat here. Okay, guys. Okay, so let's begin the session. Um, now, wait, Sumit, I'll bring in the presentation. Don't worry. Okay. So, what makes an industry different from another industry? What makes aerospace and aviation different from manufacturing or banking industry? And I think if when I look at even in my consulting or even when I was working in different industries, I would always look at this top-down difference and try to understand, what are the contrasts between different industries, and if you engage in doing that, then what you realize is, what you will get to know is what makes that industry unique, right? And it's putting your finger on that uniqueness of the industry, uh, and trying to transform that part which is unique within that industry, that you can that will bring in the disproportionate benefits of transformation of an IT intervention, or what we call nowadays as digital transformation, right? So typically, there are resources which I will point you out to, but just by like doing a mind mapping of that industry, you can figure it out. Like for example, in case of aerospace and aviation, there's a very high value asset which is an aeroplane, and wow, I think the entire profitability and effectiveness of a company depends on how well it can sweat the aeroplane. And then if you really build on that, it comes to like, how well can you how can you how can you really sweat an asset like an aeroplane, is like, your asset repair and maintenance becomes the most critical process, right? So sometimes the answers are not very obvious, but the answers may be, with this logical deduction of, okay, if this is what it is, then what would really make it successful, right? Of course there are like, other stuff like pricing, and pricing management, etc. But the if I put my finger on airlines, the amount of effort they put on repairs and maintenance, and the aircraft turnaround times, and the moment when the aircraft gate opens and then the moment when the gate closes, that's a turnaround time when the aircraft is not making money, right? That's what we call in industrial engineering terms as the setup time. So since today's topic is manufacturing industry, I want to start with how do you look at, just okay, yeah, guys, sorry, I'm sure there are some errors which have formatting errors which have crept up as I uploaded this presentation on the studio. But let's see how we can work around it. Okay, yeah. So when you look at manufacturing industry, look at the mind map. Broadly, when I look at manufacturing industry, I say, oh, you know what? There are two types of manufacturing, not just one, right? There is one which is continuous manufacturing, or what we call as process manufacturing, and there is a discrete manufacturing, that station by station, a work process happens, and workmen are involved. So typically, when you look at what makes these industries distinct from each other, is recipes and bombs. Okay, recipes and bills of material. Recipes are like, those proportions in which your input material have to go in. And then if you realize that, if this is, and this is the really big distinction in manufacturing, because how you consume your material, how you consume, I mean, how you sort of like, manage your inventories, how you run your quality process, automation. A lot of it actually depends on whether you are in discrete or whether you're in manufacturing, process manufacturing. Process manufacturing will have a lot more control systems, lot more real time in process quality management systems, a lot of like, in process alert management, etc., etc., than discrete manufacturing. um, even when they are, let's say, equal in the most automated operations, there will still be certain differences, right? Now, if you look at, let's say, process manufacturing, right? Process manufacturing, you may have very tightly regulated industries which may affect the industry in a certain way and may create a different set of success factors. Like, for example, pharma, for example, explosives, right? So these are very, very highly regulated industries. But if you look at loosely regulated industries, metals, fertilizers, etc., etc., which so again, when you look at just the process manufacturing, you'll find that there are some differences which come primarily because of the regulation. So what we are trying to do here, unless you think I'm blabbering, 50-year-old, we are trying to put our finger on what is a kind of tilting factor for a particular operation. So when you're looking at an organization, you start looking at, hey, where does it fit, right? Now, similarly, when you look at discrete manufacturing, now we have non-serialized products there, which are components, hardware, nuts, bolts, bulbs, and you name it, right? So these are, but what is distinct is that these are all looking similar. Typically, they will be lower value, and you are not really tracking product at a unit level, from a life cycle point of view. And then you have serialized products. You have cars, trucks, gensets, railway locomotives, aeroplanes, elevators, etc., etc. And these are high value. These carry a serial number, and therefore an additional set of processes which get introduced in serialized products compared to non-serialized products is the asset lifecycle management. So let's say, for example, you are a component manufacturer and you are making, let's say, the harnesses or hoses, or let's say, uh, you know uh, uh, for example, some components which go within the bonnet. Typically you will be in the left side, but then if you're making, let's say, even within the car, if you're making engines or alternators, or let's say, for example, seats and all, and you're tracking the serial numbers and therefore tracking the quality to that will go into your serialized products. Okay. So and then, of course, like across all of these, there will be again a distinct another distinction which will come, which will affect your processes. And what kind of interventions will create success for you. One is if you have direct to customer, and if you have distribution channels. And let me tell you from my experience what makes manufacturing really complex from an ecosystem engagement, or from customer management point of view, is the introduction of distribution channels. That means you don't have a direct connect with the customer. It's actually your distributors and your dealers who have the connect with the customer, and therefore there's a lot of opacity from a customer point of view that comes to you. Okay. So here, thanks Sumit for sending me the comments on private chats. Somehow the problems doesn't seem to go away. So Akash Yadav, hey, thanks Akash for joining and asking the question. So what do you think, how AI will help in manufacturing industry? Mm, yeah, my team tells me that the mobile chats are not visible in StreamYard. So guys, if any one of you doesn't mind an extra effort of taking out your laptop, especially if you have to ask a question or engage in an interaction, humble request, not created by me. It's a problem created by the the mobile app of LinkedIn versus the StreamYard virtual studio that we use. This has been happening for last few Clarity chats. We have been relentlessly raising support requests on both StreamYard and LinkedIn, that guys, this chat integration is not working. But monopolies. So the first casualty of a monopoly is customer service. Okay. So, Akash, coming to your question, how do you think AI will help in the manufacturing industry? I think the biggest one will be in quality, in my view. Okay. So, today a lot of quality control is visual. Okay. And I have seen, actually, during my working tenure itself, we had introduced cameras on the shop floor, and those cameras were monitoring, like, very highly sensitive and highly, you can say, precision parts. When they were being manufactured, these cameras were, like, really monitoring the entire process, from a step, whether the steps are being followed as they are supposed to be followed, etc., etc. So that can be one big area. The other big area is that manufacturing typically has a huge amount of documentation, right? You have internal documentation which is related to design, SOPs. You have, customer side documentation, user manuals, service manuals, etc. And a lot of this knowledge is, like, lying around in a relatively non-searchable fashion, right? So if, let's say, the LLMs that we are talking about right nowadays, we talk about specifically about AI as large language models. You could actually, feed all this information into LLM, private LLM, and and provide a chat interface to your employees. So that can really, let's say, for example, if a problem has happened before and there's a document available, the problem happens again, you can simply type it there, and it can tell you that, hey, it happened in, I mean, this is how it was solved in some other plant, in some other genre, etc., etc., right? So, I hope, Akash, that answers your question. Again, there are innumerable ways in which AI will affect us. I'm right now reading a couple of PDFs on ASI, which is artificial super intelligence, which will shortly be here. Okay, I will be. I'll Sumit, please make a note. I'll give you a couple of links to be shared with the audience on artificial super intelligence. Well, between AI and ASI, there are many problems it can solve. There are the areas that I have, with my experience in automotive, specifically in automotive, that I kind of sense it can solve. Typically, manufacturing industries, especially people who design products, they have a huge, what I call as a sprawl of component designs. So the engineers, they don't take the effort to reuse a design, but they just, like, design the same component, every specification same, but under a new part number, right? And then if you look at, the kind of impact it has on the downstream chain, whether it's your, procurement, manufacturing, service, and all of that, is significant. It may not be even exactly the same, but it may be, like, similar. It may not be that precision. Let's say there are brackets, right? These brackets are like, those, what do you call, bent pieces of metal, which are used to strengthen a particular joint, right? So you have two steel plates coming like this. You will have a bracket supporting it and bolted on both sides. um, I mean, there are bracket designs, where just the drilling, point may be different. Okay. Which actually can be made the same. I mean, it need not be different. So I've seen that kind of sprawl. Design is sprawl is something that can be the similar components, can be kind of clubbed in terms of inventory, and even from a point of view of design, to create those, what we call as a um, interchangeable part numbers. That could be another big area which can actually reduce your inventories a lot, and which can simplify your designs a lot. Okay. By the way, guys, my team tells me that the YouTube comments are visible. So in case you want to comment and you're on LinkedIn, you can actually jump to YouTube. Okay. Okay. So another question that is coming with from Deepak is, can we use the chatbot also on the shop floor? You will have to find out an interface, Deepak, uh, a good interface that will be able to serve your purpose. Because I worked on the shop floor. They are not the best places for using either a laptop or a mobile phone. There's a lot of the temperatures are high. The shop floors are not air conditioned. The temperatures are high. There's a lot of I would say grease and muck out there. So any kind of chat, any kind of touch interface, becomes a little difficult. And typically what happens is that the guys who are really working on the shop floor and the guys who are working on who are using the shop floor equipment, uh, typically, like, there's some roles that need to that kind of like evolve, that, hey, you will be doing the data entry because my hands will be dirty, right? And generally the supervisor does it. So what you have to crack is, how will you use the chatbot on the shop floor, right? That's a practical problem. Because on the shop floor, a very important factor is the productivity of the people. Okay. um, you don't want them distracted, right? So you have to really do, and I have a slide on that later, is see, one is the utility of a technology in a particular context to solve a particular problem. Let's say the operator needs technical help, right? Yes, of course, a chatbot can help him. But then how will you extend that? How will you make the ends meet is something which is the subject of user experience design. Okay. I have a slide at the end on that. I wasn't sure whether I should show that or not, but I will definitely show that now that your question has come. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so Vinay says, well awaited session. Thank you, Vinay. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let me quickly summarize the slide, and why it is relevant in whichever industry you are. Try to look at the specific, context of your particular organization, from a overall industry point of view. So if you say, hey, I'm into manufacturing, then the first thing, if I'm talking to somebody, he says, hey, I'm a manufacturing person. I say, hey, okay, process manufacturing or discrete manufacturing? I'll say, oh, process manufacturing. I'll say, okay. So how regulated is your industry? I mean, um, what kind of scrutiny you come under from regulators? Say, oh, no, not much. Okay, now I know that, okay, there is a certain way that industry works. There'll be more focus on productivity, there'll be more focus on cost and all that. But when it is tightly regulated, there'll be a different set of considerations. I'll typically ask a question, hey, what's your go-to market model, right? Are you selling directly to customers, let's say pharma companies selling directly to hospitals, or are you like selling through a channel? And if it is a channel, then how many layers in that channel? Okay. And that kind of, you start making a sense of, what is the specific context of that particular organization. In the discrete manufacturing, whatever you manufacture, does it carry a serial number? Oh, yeah, my car carries a VIN number. But I'll say, no, I make hoses, they don't carry any kind of numbers. Okay, so now I know the differences. Okay. Okay, so now let me go on to the next one. Well, I mean, by looking at this, you will realize that uh, companies which manufacture these serialized products typically are high value, and they are far more complex compared to anybody else. So let me take that specific example. Okay. So if you look at the conceptual information model for serialized assets, so now when we are saying that these are the, like, different connotations that you can find in a particular industry model, the next thing is that, to even understand the digital transformation opportunities, you have to understand the conceptual data model, right? I mean, information model for that. So let's say this one is a generalization of vehicles, of automobiles, and I have generalized it for assets, any kind of assets. You can actually apply this particular model on gensets. You can apply it on construction equipment. You can apply it on elevators. You can apply it on anything where you can find a serial number. Let's say even refrigerators to an extent, but they have multi-tier distribution models, so this may not work that well. Okay, so you have manufacturers and brand owners. They need customer data, which they need for marketing and CRM. you have partners, and you have assets. So all your work which is happening, the core of your business is basically that product, that asset, which is a vehicle or a genset or an elevator or a construction equipment. That asset may have telemetry, it may have a telematics, sort of edge device out there, it may have some sensors and all of that. So it may be generating its own data, but then the transaction data it generates is not when it comes across a manufacturer, but really when it comes across a dealer, right? A dealer or a service center. That's when all your transactions are happening: sales, service, whether it's customer history or whether it is the asset service history. It's all getting generated between the product and the dealer. But then, if that's the case, then what's the value of value of the manufacturer or the brand owner? Guys, I mean, you're supplying all the master data, right? I mean, the entire product management, parts masters, product masters, service masters, asset masters, pricing masters, all of that is being supplied by you. So you have a big role to play. And now think about the challenge of keeping all of this standardized and harmonized across your entire partner ecosystem, because you will have a lot of partners, right? uh, that's one dimension of what you need to do, but the second dimension of it is managing the partners, right? So you have to sell to the partners, you have to give them a lot of technical documentation, there's a lot of communication involved. Whenever dealers face a problem with your customers which they cannot resolve, you need to collaborate with them. You need to give them the systems to, complaint management systems, warranty systems, etc. You have your ERP, they will have a system which will typically be a customer management system. You have to integrate with that. You also have to give them a certain amount of automation, because they are going to do a lot of transactions with you, right? So they're going to buy these vehicles or equipment from you, they're going to buy the spare parts from you, they're going to raise warranty on you. There's a ton of transactions that happens with them. You will have to automate those transactions. Okay. So these are the different what do you call, say, information management areas or challenges that you need to have, that you will have. And maybe, like, your ability to do to fix the data and KPI problem in an industry where, let's say, there are assets, will depend on how well and how streamlined you make these data systems. So okay, I told you that I will also give you examples. So typically, when think of it as an automotive CRM. um, Long back, the state used to be that, these transaction management systems used to be like a point based systems. Every dealer will have their own systems, and therefore, you cannot have standardization, whether in your customer formats or whether customer prices, etc. The dealers carried a lot of specificity on what they could do with your customers, right? Now, the moment most of the industry now has a centralized CRM, come dealer management system, which basically takes care of all of these aspects, whether it is your master data, which gets harmonized across all your partners, a lot of automation with your partners. The vehicle gets built in ERP, it becomes available within a few minutes on the dealer system for billing. You have new parts coming in, they automatically reflect in your product master. You have new warranty codes coming in, so a lot of this automation that happens. Even automation from a from a parts point of view. Let's say, you do a warranty service, the warranty claim can get automatically uploaded. You can run an algorithm for parts planning, and this parts order can be automatically sent to your ERP and all that. So there's a huge amount of maybe, let me give it a different twist. I would say that, if you're in a manufacturing organization with a channel, the first problem that you need to fix is your data and information flow with your channel. If you're able to fix it and automate it to a great extent, the next part of what of automating your customer and automating and streamlining your customer transactions becomes much easier. Okay. Okay. So guys, if at any point in time you think that this is becoming too theoretical, or you need an example, or you contest what I'm saying, please do send in a comment. I don't want this to be a monologue, but this is like, I mean, I'm a strategist, and I'm kind of sharing something which how I approach things, top down, breaking it up into multiple parts, sorting it, parsing it in different ways, and then trying to make sense of it, right? So this one will make a good sense for you on three different elements of an operation, which is the let me summarize this that way. So there's a brand owner, there's an asset out there in the field, a product, and there's a customer, and there's a dealer, right? So the customer, most of 90% of the action happens between the customer, the product, and your dealer, right? Your challenge in digital transformation will be how to get this information streamlined and in a much and more real time format into my systems. To do that, you have to work with the dealers. How you work with the dealers, how you incentivize them to help you in streamlining and standardizing all this, is on the right side, which is automate whatever you're doing with their dealers. That gives them an incentive to come on that system which is automating that part, plus plus streamlining the customer information. And then on the left side, you have all the standardization that you need to do with your channel partners, right? Okay, so now comes your a very interesting one, okay, which is um, when you are talking of digital transformation, right? Think of all kinds of players who are engaging with either your product or your customer. Let me repeat. Think of all kinds of parties or stakeholders, right, which are interacting with your customer or your product. Okay. Now, they may not have a formal relationship. They may have a formal relationship with you. They may have a semi formal relationship with you, and they may have a completely no relationship with you. Okay. But the experience of your product or the experience for your customer, okay, has got nothing to do with what is their experience with you. The experience, your customer's experience, if we uh, and I'm again telling you, for me, uh, digital transformation means transformation of your experience. Okay. If you're calling it a employee intervention, it should transform the experience of your employees. If it is customer, then it should transform the experience of your customers. So now first you have to understand how, in what all ways your customer is experiencing you. Okay, it is you and your product. It's not only what you and your formal partners do, but it's also like what the entire ecosystem is doing. So let me directly come here. Okay, so what you see in green here are basically people who have a direct and formal relationship with you. For example, banks, fleet owners, dealers, spare parts distributors, insurance companies, vehicle owners and operators. Many of these, most of them have a direct relationship with you. That means they exist as a code in your ERP or CRM. Okay, then you have people who have a semi-formal relationship with you, or you can potentially have a semi-formal relationship with you. For example, used vehicle sellers. Used vehicle sellers are not on your database, right? But you could still have some value for them, where, let's say, for example, service history is a critical component of the used vehicle value. So can you give service history as a service? Charge them whatever, 500 rupees or 1000 rupees, right? But potentially there's a value there for both, for you in terms of making money, but as well as for them in terms of providing a more predictable and a more, let's say, reliable product to their customers, right? Similarly, look at independent service mechanics. Independent service mechanics, you could actually promote the sale of genuine spare parts by giving them a loyalty scheme. Actually, many companies have done that. My previous company, Tata Motors, has done that. They run a loyalty scheme for service mechanics, and let's say all your what do you call genuine parts carry a scratch code, and they can actually SMS this scratch code from the registered number, and they get some loyalty points, and that's how it's good for the customer, it's good for the mechanic, it's a win-win for everybody. Driver end users, drivers are never in your database. I mean, in any company's database, the end user drivers, people who are really driving the car. I mean, for example, I have got a car, but I've got a driver who drives that car. I may be on the database of my car manufacturer, but not my driver. So how can you give driver applications for drivers? Because they are significant influencers for your products, right? I know there are many markets, where the drivers dictate the terms to their employer that बॉस ये वाली गाड़ी है तो मैं नहीं चलाऊंगा, राइट, मैं यही वाली गाड़ी चलाऊंगा, because they bear the brunt of that product, right? So they act as influencers. So how can you influence those influencers, right? So similarly, if you look at governments and public organizations, so your Vahan integrations, you have stolen vehicle alerts. Again, you can actually collaborate with with the law enforcement agencies and send them alerts if they tell you that, hey, watch out for this particular vehicle number, etc., right? um, I mean, even in case of trucks and all, you have consignors are like cement companies, steel companies. So all the, if you look at your manufacturing companies on your on the stock market list, most of them may not be direct customers for a truck manufacturer, but they are consignors. They are sending uh, hundreds and hundreds of trucks every day from their factories, right? And they are an important consumer for you if you look at them from the lens that I'm giving you right now, right? So, not to belabor the point, you have seen how I have mapped the different players and how I have, like, in the purple boxes, I have mentioned the potential value adds to these to these players from the data that you hold in your repositories, right? Okay. So thanks for your question, Abha says, where does SCM fit into the model? So Abha, maybe you might have joined late, but I mentioned that we're right now looking at the automotive ecosystem, and we're not really going towards the back end. We are really looking at more market facing players this time. I mean, I think in 1 hour for me to fit the entire digital transformation across SCM, manufacturing, design, sales and marketing, maybe a tall order. Hmm. But coming to your question, mm, see, the SCM, if you look at these consigners I talked about, right? So consigners, everybody who's manufacturing something and sending somewhere, right? I mean, there is a play, uh, there's a sort of IoT or telematics play, right? So um, by using telematics, you could actually tighten your supply chain management quite a bit. Okay, so that's the limited point within whatever we are discussing right now. If you have a follow-up question on this or a very specific question on this, I mean, on, let's say, digital transformation in SCM in a particular context, let me know. I'll try to answer that. Okay, but let me move on. I hope this part is clear. Okay, so let me summarize it. What we are saying is that typically in the traditional model, we have the formal players who are in your databases, which are your dealers, your service centers, maybe your parts distributors, maybe your financiers, the bank relationships that you have, some large customers like institutional customers that you have. But if you really want to, that's the traditional entity model, that these are the various entities out there. But if you're looking at digital transformation, means customer and product in the center, and then looking at the entirety of the experience of your customer with your product with respect to everybody who is basically who's participating in providing some value to the customer, right? Now if you see all of these people that I have mentioned there, They're somewhere or the other, in some way or the other, engaged with the customer or engaged with the value proposition for the customer, but they may not be directly your partners. But you being a manufacturer and you holding, let's say, an enormous amount of data about the customer can actually help these people improve their experience of the customer, right? So for example, if you give a driver app, if you give apps for drivers, they are not your customers, but your customers will really appreciate that. Oh my god, you're making my driver's life simple. And just as an example, okay, let me move on, let me not belabor this point. Okay, now the next thing is that we have discussed about data, how to look at the information model, how to look at the data, how to look at, like, how the data can be generated or and can be served to various participants. Now let's look at how do you look at KPI. Now, the one of the biggest problems in technology is the ROI, right? So people say that, and our entire agenda of Clarity Chat is driven around how to get value out of technology. I have actually seen business value analysis of various technologies where they will say that your this thing will go up, your customer satisfaction will go up, your inventories will go down, and so they will take all the CFO level KPIs and they'll say that this will go up and down, and nothing happens, right? And so, I mean, where is the chasm? I mean, where is the gap? The gap actually is in the fact that there is an indirect impact on your business KPIs or your CFO KPIs, not a direct one. Now, where is the direct impact? That is where most people miss mapping the direct impact. So the direct impact is always on process KPIs. Okay, let's say, let me give an example in automotive context. Okay, so the vehicle comes into the workshop and it is lying there 2 days, 3 days, 4 days later, the customer picks it up. Okay, now you implement a system. Okay, and you start monitoring. Okay, typically when you put a system in place, what you will do, you will basically say, hey, what is my service revenues, what is my spare parts revenues, etc., etc., right? What is my vehicle inflow and all? People generally stop at that. Now these are, again, you can say they are performance KPIs. They are like looking back. Okay, they are telling you on a day what you did. But the process KPIs are things where you basically design a very usable and improvable piece of data. Okay, so here is the example. We created a KPI called same day delivery, okay, of vehicles. That means vehicles are coming into the workshop and how many of those vehicles are getting out on the same day. Okay, the perception in the minds of everybody who was dealing with customer service at that time was, what, 80% of the vehicles are coming out on the same day. Reality check, the moment you start measuring it, you figure out that the figure is a little bit above 50%. Okay, and that kind of sends a shockwave in the organization, and yeah, oh my god, it's 50%. Now the entire ecosystem, the entire organization and your dealers and everybody now becomes aware that, oh my god, this is being tracked. But what's the beautiful thing? It's so easy to control it. If there is a premium on a vehicle being delivered in the evening versus being delivered tomorrow morning, you will at least make 3 phone calls to the customer, maybe have somebody stay over for an extra half an hour to wait for the customer and deliver the vehicle on the same day, rather than just saying that chalta hai, we'll deliver next day. Yeah. Now, so 2 points here. One is that uh, these these KPIs have to be designed. You know, they are not so they're not so visible. They're not like around us that we can easily find them. No, you have to really invent them sometimes. But the invention has to be done with a point, with, again, the customer in the center. Okay, so now what is important for my customer? How fast I get the vehicle from the workshop, right? That same day delivery as an operating KPI for me. Let's say another one is, let's say a customer. So we invented another KPI, which was called a revisit KPI. Revisit KPI was a customer comes to your workshop and within a month he again comes. It may not be for the same problem, but for some other problem. And if you really look at the logical analysis of this, is that, whether a customer comes for one problem or two problems, we are supposed to do a complete inspection of his vehicle, right? You're supposed to check everything, and if there is something, which may go wrong, you have to alert the customer that, guys, get it done now also, because you don't want him to come again so fast to the workshop. And of course, there's a principle of cross selling or upselling also. That means if you're doing a thorough job and you're finding more problems, you actually make more money. If this customer comes for some other problem, that means you didn't do a thorough job, right? Now, both of these, where do they converge? They converge into customer satisfaction, right? So if your customer satisfaction is your KPI, that one of the big fours told your management that your customer satisfaction will improve by putting the CRM in place, but they didn't tell you how. What I'm telling you is how it happens is when you look at that customer satisfaction and break it down into where does it enter your processes, which part of your process you'll be able to measure something that results into customer satisfaction. Okay. So let me now bring you to this one here first. Okay. Now this is a very busy slide. It was made for desktop, for a large screen, whatever, 30-foot screen. But if you are watching it on your mobile, I think it's a bad fit. Okay. But let me still try to explain this to you. Okay. So what you see in the green here are capabilities, right? These are capabilities which then result into your ability to manage these orange ones, which are your operations KPIs. And these operations KPIs then impact your blue ones, which are your business KPIs. Okay. So let's take one example. Okay. So you have, let's say you have a central real-time database of your vehicle and service data, which we just discussed. Now, what it gives you, now this is the capability. Now, this capability, you can track service turnaround times. You can track delivery to promise. You told the customer you will get it after 3 days, and then you're giving it after 5 days. So that's like missing your delivery to promise, right? You are able to you are able to track your customer complaint resolution time. These are all process KPIs, right? You can track your spare parts inventory. You can track your parts availability. So let's come on the left side. So service turnaround time and delivery to promise, they actually result in improved revenue, right? They result in increased service visits and therefore improved revenue, right? And if you look at, let's say, customer complaint resolution, low or no recalls, etc., they increase your customer satisfaction. Both of them are your CFO KPIs. Okay. Similarly, let's say if you have a central spares inventory and tracking across all your dealers, and then you have you can actually roll out new value-added services like accessories and all through that. You get a streamlined supply chain, you get visibility of other dealers' inventory, so you improve your parts availability, you improve your service revenue, and you improve your service turnaround times. If your spares availability improves, your vehicle service turnaround times also improve, right? So that's how you look at it. I know it's a busy one, so if you don't understand it, it's okay. I can explain it again, but then how you look at your processes, look at your process, look at the KPI of that particular process itself, not a CFO KPI for that particular process. For example, simple things, prospect management will have lead conversion and lead conversion time. So your lead conversion, if it is like looking 100%, look at your lead conversion time. If your lead conversion time is 1 hour, then you know that people are actually putting a lead only when they're putting an order. That's the biggest problem in most CRMs. And how you fix that problem? By tracking lead conversion and lead conversion cycle time. If your lead conversion cycle time is anything less than a day or 2 days, that means people are gaming the system. They're not putting the prospects in the system, right? And then so you do your pipeline summary and conversion analysis. So you look at an area, look at the processes, look at the KPIs, and then design your dashboards on those KPIs. We actually start the other way around. We first design the dashboard and then we say, okay, so what KPI should I put here, right? Similarly, let's say for sales, you have retails and stock management. So it's like, now what is the biggest problem? Again, please start looking at these KPIs from a problem and solution point of view. What's a big problem we have in sales? 50% of my sales happens in the last 3 days, right? Can you track it as a KPI? It's so easy. So just track what percentage of sales you did in the last 3 days and try to reduce it, right? So this is a sales Pareto. Okay, your sales Pareto goes it goes up to 40% till 28th, right? And then it goes 100% on 31st. A sales Pareto dashboard will give you the reality check on that, right? And that will basically help you improve your conversions throughout the month. Okay. Similarly, like stock management, average stock age in number of days. Again, if you do the aging analysis, create aging buckets for your vehicles. These are like expensive equipment, right? Each one costs a few lakhs. You must minimize their age in the inventory, and that will help you reduce your working capital. Now your CFO KPI is working capital, okay? But what is your operating KPI? Average stock age in number of days, okay? Vehicle by vehicle, and then model by model, you basically start bucketing it, and that's how you start fixing it. I wouldn't want to go through all of these. We are a bit crunched for time. Okay, so now let's talk about some of these data-driven transformations. Examples. I told you that I'll give you a lot of gyan, and then I'll give you examples as well. But meanwhile, let me just check for comments here. So data insight. So Abha Pandey says the data insight and analysis is important. Absolutely, Abha. Many times we end up making dashboards without the purpose of that dashboard. Okay, so typically I look at data from, as I said, from a problem point of view. Hey, what is the problem that you want to solve? And these are like abound. And if you don't find problems, you look at them from customer's point of view, and then do a logical deduction of where is the data? How will I measure the data? If the data is there, do I need to do some massaging there to to get a KPI? So let's talk through these examples now. Okay, again in the interest of time. So improving service turnaround time is very simple. We made sure that we capture a timestamp of the entry time in the workshop and the timestamp of, let's say, the delivery time, right? And then now what you need to do in your analytics system or somewhere within that service record is also introduce a field which is a B minus A. Okay, B minus A, and put it right there so that you can sort data on that. You can run a quick report data on that, etc., right? So by doing this, I think that 50%, within no time, it actually went up to 70%. With a bit of extra effort and process reengineering, it went to 80%. And then then we had to do some really major interventions, like, for example, creating a quick service kind of base, and multiple other things to then slowly take it up to 80 to 90. If you are tracking the right process KPIs, your improvements are very fast, okay, but then they plateau. Just by measuring it, just by people becoming aware that this is being measured, you see a good improvement. Then you see the next set of improvements when you start tweaking things around, okay, the cause effect relationship. And then the next set of improvements, which are really hard, come from complete process reengineering. Okay, improving service quality, same thing. Measuring repeat complaints and revisits, and then measuring it dealer by dealer, that helped. It went up to a certain extent. At the second level, dealers started saying, hey, when I'm attending a complaint, the complaint is coming again on the vehicle within 3 months, so you are tagging it as repeat complaint. But you know what? I'm not the cause for it. Why are you tracking it against me? The cause is like that guy who did the last job. So we actually went back and we started retagging the repeat complaints on the guy who did the previous job. Okay. And suddenly the complete way of measuring, repeat complaints changed, and the guys became far more responsible. And initially there was a bit of mix up in, like, how the data was measured, but then slowly people realize that it's the logical thing to do. The previous dealer should get penalized for a repeat complaint, not the one, where the job card is tagged as repeat complaint. It should be tagged somewhere there. I mean, these are, again, intelligent things that you do, and sometimes they hit you only when you start tracking these. Zero recalls. Again, you introduce new products in the market, um, you know, tag those products as new products. As soon as it comes to the workshop, start monitoring their health, start monitoring anything failing, any complaints coming, and then take the interventions right up front, right before the 100th vehicle is out in the market, and you can have zero recalls. Well, guys, I can only tell you indirectly that there's one company which hasn't seen, you wouldn't have seen a single news of recall in the last 20 years. Guess what? Result of this: performance versus perception KPIs. Okay, now every organization actually measures this. Now this was, again, I must acknowledge Mr. Vikram Sinha, who was our head of service, and he brought in this concept of performance versus perception KPIs. So we had a lot of KPIs on the dashboards. So he said, okay, these are performance KPIs. That means there is hardcore data, operations data behind that. Like, for example, repeat complaint, revisit, same day delivery, etc., etc. And then there are perception KPIs. So you call the customer after 3 days, are you happy with your service? Whether he's happy or not, that's a perception KPI, right? So, and then you start monitoring, correlating between these, and you will find out that there are not direct and very established correlations. And then you find a completely new avenue of factors. They can be about attitude. You may have done the best job, okay, on the vehicle, but the attitude of your service advisor was bullshit. So the customer goes away unhappy, right? So then you start identifying those interventions where you need to do the soft interventions, where the performance KPIs are very good, but the perception KPIs are not so good, right? There's another one, which is accident repair experience transformation. Again goes by data. The data says that, listen, there are 70 plus days. Vehicle, if it meets with an accident, takes 70 plus days, especially I'm talking of trucks. One of my colleagues told me how they're using data to transform that experience. And now, why does it take so much time? Because most of the parts which are required, are slow moving parts or non moving parts. These are like, panels and uh, you know things like, which will never be replaced in a normal scenario. So well, how they this was brought down from 70 plus days to under 15 days, just by tracking and by putting up a backend process in place. As soon as accident repair job card is opened anywhere, okay, there's a central team which gets an alert, and they start tracking that. As soon as you have the insurance approval, okay, they basically all get down across the entire ecosystem wherever the spare parts are there, and they basically start helping the dealer with those spare parts. So somebody is in constant touch with the dealer, saying that, guys, ye spare part yahan pe hai, this spare part is here, I'm getting it shipped across to you. And it's all like, being done for the customer. So imagine, like, 70 plus days coming to like 10 plus days. That's transformation. I'll call that as transformation. Okay. So I wouldn't belabor the point further now, and let me move to, yeah. I mean, I just covered this one, future trends. I think Deepak and Akash, if I'm correct, right? Akash, yeah, your questions were covered here. There are we are out of time, but let me still take a few minutes to cover the rest of it. Okay. So there are products embedded with IoT. That means you have these fans which are controlled by your mobile phones. Now that's like, you have to be really worried about the customer experience. You need to actually put tracking mechanisms on the product as well as on your mobile phone, on the mobile app performance. It may so happen that some third party made a mobile app for you which controls the fan. The mobile app has lots of bugs, and the customer is unhappy that, hey, you guys don't even know how to make good fans, right? Sustainability, artificial intelligence, and servitization. So let me just cover a couple of them. Artificial intelligence, we did discuss Akash's question, where we said that there's a huge amount of knowledge base which can be used by you, your workmen, your dealerships, your service ecosystem, and your what do you call spare parts ecosystem, as well as your customers. So look at bringing it all into an LLM, and then serving it using chatbots and all, right? Like, for example, a simple thing, one of the most complex problems for in service, especially for old vehicles, is that I have got a particular vehicle and there's a particular component fitted in that. I want to know the part number. I can't know the part number, but AI allows you that kind of capability, that if you say this is my VIN number, and it can actually go back and correlate that, hey, which product it belongs to, what is the lineage, that means which year it was manufactured, and therefore which batch it was, and therefore what is the applicability, what is the applicable part number, etc., etc. And well, you can, if you can upload an image, it can also, like, get those similar numbers, etc., etc. So there are immense possibilities out there. And finally, servitization is like very interesting one, which is like converting a product into service. Okay, so I'll just give you an example, which is aircraft engines nowadays are sold by the hour. That means the number of hours in operation, you pay for that. Okay, and everything else is sort of included. Okay. So let me not belabor that point, but just coming to the last two slides, which are non-technology transformation enablers. I must tell you that most digital transformation programs fail because of your awareness of these factors. The first one is policies for uniform customer experience. Now, as you are working with your channel partners, you have to have policies, and many times, coming to the point below, you have to actually cover these with the right legal contracts. Okay, for experience, for data and system ownership, and even for indemnities. Okay, the sometimes your dealer can actually basically raise his hand saying that, listen, my OEM gave me this system, and what, I couldn't do this, so it's not my liability. My customer is unhappy, goes to court, that's not my liability. So you will have to create those kind of indemnities. Okay, change management, of course, we have had a couple of sessions on change management, so you can go through those clarity chats. And more importantly, support for new channels. Many a times we create new channels and we leave them unmonitored, right? We create a digital channel. Let's say you created an e-commerce website for yourself, and then you are not monitoring it. You're not monitoring whether the site is up and down, whether payment gateway is working or not. And if there's a support chat you have provided, there's somebody, like, monitoring it 24/7 or not. Many times you may have blinders. Let's say your dealers work morning 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and therefore your entire organization works 9 to 5, and therefore your support channel also works 9 to 5. Come on, e-commerce people use late nights, I mean evenings and late nights. You have to put those kind of support channels with the right timings in place, to make sure that your transformation initiative gives you the full benefit. And I think the last one, I was not sure whether I will show this or not, but let me show this, because this is about the chatbot on the shop floor, the question that Deepak asked. So Deepak, there's a complete, you can say, discipline of design thinking. Okay, which basically is a very, very big enabler of how you marry technology with human experience. Okay, so see, we all agree that there is enough technology today in the world, right? I mean, any problem that you want to solve, there's a technology out there, right? But we still have problems. Why? Because the problems are always human in nature. Okay, Whereas, so we tend to throw technology at human problems. We can, if we use the tools of design thinking. So design thinking basically says put the customer in the center, okay, and look at his experience, his or her experience, and then generate a lot of first understand the needs which are said, which are unsaid as well, okay. And then look at you generate a range of options, shortlist a few of them, and then attune and refine them to the problem at hand, right? So you satisfy not just known needs, which you are saying that chatbots on the shop floor, but also unknown needs, what else he may need, right? Okay, so that is the last slide. So guys, if we have to quickly recap, which I want to do. I got feedback that we must recap. So let me quickly run through the slides as a recap itself. Okay, let me see if I can do it in a minute or two. Okay, so we first looked at that there are no generalities. There is nothing called manufacturing. There's nothing called process manufacturing alone or discrete manufacturing alone. Your ability to conceptualize digital transformation in any industry uh, depends on your ability, in any organization depends on your ability to put your fingers on the nerve points of that particular industry. And then we further talked about the entire example of industries with asset life cycles, like the serialized assets, automobiles, elevators, gensets, etc., etc., and the information model that needs to be managed and streamlined in order to provide value to all the stakeholders. Please understand, if whatever you are doing provides value only to you, it's not going to be successful. If it provides more value to the customer, to the ecosystem, that is when it will happen. And these are the various. So how do you assess the value? Is by looking at the information model and how does it basically help the players. Then we said that you should define the customer market ecosystem in a very expansive way. Not expensive means not money wise expensive, but size wise expensive way. Look at every single player who's adding value to your product or to your customer, and see how you can design, how you can data enable or information enable them, so that they are able to serve your customers better. Okay. We took examples of drivers and mechanics, who are influencers to your customers. Then we talked about the KPIs. We said that the primary premise was that while the big fours will come and tell your management that, hey, this is how your ROI will improve, this is how your return on capital, ROC, will improve, this is how your CSI will improve. Technology never improves the business KPIs directly. It improves the operations KPIs. So you have to create a bridge between your final top management KPIs with respect to what are the operating KPIs that your technology is going to address. And we took multiple examples, like CSI being related to repeat complaints, being related to same day delivery, being related to service quality, etc., etc. Your working capital being linked to your same day, being linked to your parts availability, your parts planning, etc., etc., those processes, right? Then we took some examples of data driven transformations. Data driven transformation happens in three stages. The first stage is when you start measuring it for everybody. People just the fact that you are measuring it takes it up. The biggest jump comes there. Okay. And then it kind of plateaus there, and then you have to start identifying other tweaks, start getting into the next level of problem solving, and that results in maybe new SOPs, maybe certain new processes, and that takes you to the next jump, right? So maybe let's say if you have to go from 60 to 90, then first 20 will happen just because you're measuring it. The next probably 7 will happen with these what do you call SOPs tweaking and changing mechanisms. And probably the last 3% or 5% will happen when you do a complete BPR. Okay. And that is when you can also redefine your levels of performance also. We discussed about accident repairs coming down from 70 days to 11 days by putting up a dedicated, accident repair support desk in place. Zero recalls by just monitoring the data of your new vehicles. Improving service quality by tagging the right, past job cards, with the with the, who are causing the repeat complaints, etc. Right. And last but not the least, we talked about the transformation enablers: policies, legal coverages, indemnities, change management, um, and support for new channels. Don't leave your new channels unmanaged. When you set up a dealer, you also appoint a dealer manager to manage that dealer and to support that dealer. Similarly, when you put a new digital channel, you must also have in place a support mechanism for the new channel. So, and finally, last but not the least, the design thinking to bridge the gap between, to make ensure that the technology's interventions are resulting in a great customer experience. You don't start with technology, you start with experience. Put the customer in the center, map out his met and unmet needs or stated and unstated needs, and then try to solution around the customer. And that's probably one of the most important things in your digital transformation efforts. So guys, we are 30 minutes over time, but I hope this was useful. And if there are any questions, you can ask on the chat. I'll try to respond to them on the chat itself. So on that note, let's end this session. I was thinking that this is an AMA session and it should end in like 40-45 minutes, but thanks to your questions, guys, and thanks to your engagement, and I could see that there were 30 plus people on the session. It was and maybe if I overshot on some areas, my apologies for that. This is something which is like very, very, uh, I'm very passionate about the strategy and approaches of how do you really look and nail down the value propositions. How do you use first principles to identify how value gets generated, what needs to be done, and in what shape and form, what can be directly done, what needs to be done through something else, like for example, the performance KPIs versus process KPIs versus business KPIs. A lot of these things I actually use in my consulting as well. So I have some recent examples as well, but let me not belabor it further. Thank you guys for staying over time, over 10-15 minutes. I know I always get a bashing from everybody during the feedback sessions that we have a habit of going over time. But all I can tell you as an alibi is that it's passion, and it's how personally I feel about some of these topics, and how personally I feel about transformation, having done it for more than 20 years now. On that note, thank you everyone for attending, engaging, and thank you everybody who's watching the recording of this session. Don't think that you're watching the recording so you cannot send your comments. Still send your comments as and when something comes up, and I'll make sure that I'll reply to that. Okay. On that note, see you guys. Bye bye. Once again, happy Mahashivratri, happy Women's Day. To all the lady colleagues there, I can see some of them on the chat as well. And see you after 2 weeks. And this time, hopefully, my guest will still be there and he wouldn't have any new exigency. On that note, bye bye. Have a great weekend.